Hello, my name is Rajan Arora and welcome to my course Essentials of SQL Server Performance for Every Developer. You are watching the video of Module 6 Applying Common Performance Practices, Part 6 Solving the N+1 Selects Problem. If you are new to this course, please start it from the course introduction video for better understanding. Thank you. Another performance pitfall you want to be on the lookout for, especially when using an ORM, is the N+1 selects problem. The problem occurs when you have a parent object loading its child data. And in loading that child data, the data access layer issues a separate SQL statement for each child object that needs to be loaded. Let's look at an example of this. We have a piece of code here, and what this code is trying to do is to get the cumulative GPA for a student. So it needs to get all of the courses taken by the student, their grades in each course and the number of credits each course is worth in order to perform that calculation. So this seems pretty straightforward. We load a student object and then through the navigation properties on the object we can get to all of the other data that we need to do this calculation. What happens though is that initially our student's object doesn't have all of the data that it needs. So the data for this navigations property are lazy loaded. I have an extended events session tracing all of my SQL right now, and I am going to actually run this program so we can see what's happening. And so we see that the program just prints the name and GPA. But now I am going to switch over to the trace results so we can see what SQL was run. I have my trace file open here and I have done a little bit of cleanup to filter out all of the SP reset connections messages that the SQL Server driver issues when it retrieves a connection from the connection pool. So you see right away there are quite a few statements here that are executing. And if we group these statements together, we actually get a better view of what's going on. There are some queries in here that are overheaded for entity framework, but we are not worried about those. What we care about are these two statements that are executed 42 times each. And if you expanded out the SQL that in each of those statements, you would see that these two queries that are grabbing the course offerings and course records from the database. What is happening is that entity framework is able to get all of the courses the student has taken with a single query from a course enrollments table. But then it iterates through each of those course enrollment records, and to get over to the course records where the number of credits for the class is stored, it first has to get each course offering record and then each course record. And so one by one it is iterating through this, lazy loading each of those objects for however many courses that this student has taken. And we can see here this student has taken 42 courses. So that means we have 42 unique courses offering records we have issued queries for. And then again 42 unique courses records that we also had to load. We also had to load some grade records so we could see what each grade is worth. But there is only 2 unique values for those. So that's just 2 more statements in this case. But you see the problem. To calculate the student's GPA, entity framework is having to run 87 individual queries by my count. So that's going to be very chatty and not very efficient. The issue here is the lazy loading pattern, which fetches data just as it needed. While this is convenient for many scenarios, it's not the right pattern for this scenario because we are having to go back and forth to the database to get all of this database piece by piece. What we can do instead is use eager loading to instruct entity framework to load all of this data upfront, and then entity framework will create a single query that gets all the data we need rather than issuing all of these little queries. So to do that, we just use the include method up here when we fetch our student object. So I will put that in now. And this first line is going to tell entity framework to get all of the courses offering as well as courses for the student. And the second line will get all of the grades attached to any of the course enrollments data. So when we get our student object, we will have all the data we need to do this calculation. So I am going to save this file and rerun this program so we can get a second trace of what's happening here. And now we will look at that trace. We can see that this time we have only one statement, and in fact if I take this statement here and I look at it and I have copied that in a notepad again, so we can do just that. We see that this one statement is getting all of the data that we need. So in this case, this is going to be much more efficient because we are not having to go back and forth to the database many times. This can happen when you are lazy loading objects in an ORM, as we have just seen. But I have also seen this problem in traditional data access code, where the code was written in such a way that it was retrieving all the child data for an object in a one-by-one fashion. The point is, when you are loading child data like this, you want to think about the internals of how that is happening. And make sure that you are not iterating over some sort of collection and issuing a SQL statement for each object in that collection, because that's going to be very chatty and that's not going to perform very well. So think about this whenever you are loading data that's child data of another object. And if needed, we don't hesitate to use one of the various tracing facilities to make sure that you are not issuing a whole bunch of individual SQL statements in order to get the data. In the next video, let's wrap up this last module of this course. If you like this video, please do share, like and subscribe to my channel for more such videos. Thank you and see you in the next video.